They say the Galactic Accord had 16,423 regulations on how to properly dispose of military waste. Margot Quinn had violated at least half of them just in the last 6 hours. Her ship's AI chirped for what felt like the 100th time. Warning. Unauthorized salvage operation detected. Please cease. She reached beneath the console and yanked a fistful of wires. The voice died mid-sentence. Silence. Muhbera. Classic human problem solving. If it's talking too much, make it stop. That kind of logic probably got her ancestors into trouble and might explain why there weren't many of them left to cause any more. Outside her viewport, the derelict Accord military server tumbled through vacuum like a chrome coffin. Scars of plasma fire painted its hull. Micrometeorite craters pockmarked the surface like the aftermath of a forgotten war. Someone had wanted this thing really gone, which meant it was worth a look. Margot's fingers danced across the salvage rig's controls fluid, confident, practiced. She'd spent more time in vacuum than in atmosphere. The grapples fired with a satisfying thunk, magnetic hooks biting into metal. "All right, you beautiful piece of classified trash," she muttered, activating the cutting torch. "Let's see what secrets you're." Light everywhere. Not literal, not this time. She'd seen literal universal detonations. This wasn't that. No, this was purple. Violently, impossibly purple. A console lit up like a panicked disco alerts cascading across a screen in 16 languages, half of which she couldn't pronounce. Critical file breach. Containment failure. Linguistic hazard detected. She blinked at the last one. Linguistic hazard? What? It's gonna insult my grammar? Then the data hit her. Not a download, an invasion. Symbols clawed across her neural interface, warping, twisting, until her brain forced meaning onto them. FUBAR protocols. Human combat psychology. Improvisational warfare. Then the real warning, Class X cognitive hazard. Reading may result in tactical innovation, unpredictable behavior, spontaneous combat humor, and terminal irreverence toward authority. Neural integration irreversible. You will never think normally again. This is not a weapon, it is a key. Do not turn it unless you are prepared to unlock every cage, including your own. She stared, blinked again, and then, like any half-reckless ex-Special Forces operative who'd seen too much and cared too little, she opened it. The screen didn't display the data. It poured into her brain. Not information infection. The system bloomed alive with new pathways, vulnerabilities, exploits. She wasn't learning, she was becoming first entry. Field Manual Entry 1, Strategic Application of Poultry. During the siege of Kepler Station, a private routed an entire hegemony battalion with 16 chickens, a speaker system, and the Thunderdome playlist. 3 chickens lost, full military honors, 400 enemy combatants fled in existential horror. Chickens, Colonel Saunders, Nugget, and the Chosen One. Margot laughed. She couldn't help it. This wasn't a manual, it was a comedy sketch with body counts. She scrolled Entry 47, the Florida Man Protocol. When all else fails, abandon reason. Recommended tactics include improvised weaponry, terrifying battle cries, and absolute commitment to the worst possible idea. Notable case, Corporal Mandela, 40 hostiles, 1 broken coffee maker, no clothes except boots, and an overwhelming aura of divine madness. Her neural implant pulsed, patterns whispered, language formed in the margins of thought chaos codified. A shriek tore through the ship. Proximity alarm. 3 Accord patrol vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Shields hot, weapons primed. Salvage a vessel, came the voice over a comm that was supposed to be disabled. You are in possession of restricted materials. Surrender immediately or... Margot didn't wait. Her hands moved on their own. She cranked the comm's output and let loose a sound that no living species was prepared. 4-part banshee, part food processor, part demonic jazz solo, critical biological contamination. She screamed between gargles. It's in my sinuses. Oh, no, it's trying to communicate. The lead ship actually backed off. Clarify the nature of... It says your mothers were sequential hermaphrodites, she howled, and then produced a noise that could only be described as interdimensional regret. Dead air. She hit the emergency thrusters and launched her rig straight into a nearby asteroid field, leaving the patrol ships frozen treeing to figure out which protocol covered Yo Mama jokes from an alien infection. The ship rocked as it threaded between tumbling boulders. Margot's grin widened. She had used tactics from a file she'd only been reading for 5 minutes. The file pulsed. More entries scrolled past. How to kill a god with a spoon. Aggressive friendship as psychological warfare. Strategic cowardice. When running is the plan, Bezakamut, a cost-benefit analysis. And then, entry 142, the long fade. When the war is over, but the fight is lost fade. Scatter the fire. Burn quietly. Way. Behind her, plasma fire tore through the asteroid field. She banked hard, body braced, mind reeling. She didn't know what she had found. But entry 183 said to find duct tape, and that seemed like solid advice. Let's see what you've got, humanity, she muttered, pulling into a corkscrew dive that would have blacked out lesser pilots. The file unfurled like a virus wrapped in poetry, and something deep in her clicked. This wasn't a manual. It was a love letter to beautiful chaos, and the galaxy had no idea what it had just let loose. 3 days later, Margot Quinn sat in the worst bar in the known systems. A four-armed crime lord across from her stared at his flaming drink. It's called a Molotov cocktail, she offered casually. Traditional human beverage. Tonic Corum, conqueror of 16 systems by spreadsheet and punctuality, looked deeply betrayed. You drink fire. Only on Tuesdays, she said, sipping her own non-flaming beer. Or during invasions. Depends on the vibe. He stared at her like a museum exhibit had just broken out and started throwing chairs. Honestly, he wasn't wrong. Humans were history, a punchline with teeth, a bedtime story with body counts. And Margot Quinn had just become the sequel. Tarnik's bodyguards, each one built like a siege tank with posture problems, watched Margot like she might spontaneously erupt into another war crime. Which, considering what she'd done to 3 of their facilities last week, wasn't the worst assumption. You have something I want, Tarnik said at last, lowering his flaming drink like it might explode if jostled. Her brain offered 3 responses. My sparkling personality, the file, the growing legend. Her face said none of them. Instead, her hand drifted near the plasma cutter in her boot, slow and subtle. No idea what you're talking about. But Tarnik wasn't here to be charmed. The file, he said. The one that teaches strange tactics. The one that let you destroy my weapons depot using cleaning supplies and aggressive jazz music. Ah, that file, she smiled all teeth. Turns out industrial degreaser and smooth saxophone make one hell of a psychological cocktail. Your boys forgot how to violence. One of his forearms twitched toward a weapon. The others struck what might have been a thoughtful pose. Or he had a rash. Hard to tell with his species. I've heard the legends about your kind, he said, voice careful. Didn't think I'd see one this undiluted. That word hung in the air, like spilled chemicals. Margot's smile thinned. Some legends bite. I will pay. Not for sale. I will pay handsomely. Still not for sale. I will pay enough to buy a small moon. Her eyes narrowed. Define moon, because some of them are just rocks with illusions of grandeur. Behind the bar, the four-armed bartender polished a glass with an exhausted mechanical rhythm. The movement was oddly human, like watching an old habit fossilized in another culture. Kin whispered something small and dangerous inside her. She buried it. Hope was a trap more subtle than any mind. Tarnik's obsidian features twisted in frustration or indigestion. He was hard to read. You don't understand what you're carrying. That file isn't just tactics. It's evolution. It's chaos with syntax. It's humanity being humanity." She cut in. "And you don't want it. I'll be the judge of..." The door exploded. Not metaphorically. Thermite didn't do metaphors. Smoke belched in, framing the figure stepping through. Violin. 7 feet of Terran law enforcement in polished death. Every movement promised violence. His weapon looked like it required a license just to be in the same room. His face radiated bureaucratic suffering. "Margot Quinn," he intoned, like he was ordering a sandwich he didn't want. "By order of the Galactic Accord, you are under arrest for..." He checked the data pad. "Theft, destruction of property, psychological warfare, unleashing a Class X cognitive hazard, teaching combat drones to play poker, violation of the Post-Accord's genetic identity clause, and..." He paused. "Something called the chicken incident? They named it?" Margot blinked. "That's adorable." She sipped her beer. "And what's this about a genetic identity clause?" "You know what it means," Violin said. "The don't be human too loudly law. 16 casualties. 16 soldiers traumatized by poetry," she corrected. "Different metric. The Accord disagrees." His tone said he did too. Tonic's bodyguards pointed their weapons at Violin. Violin's cannon pointed at Margot. Margot's beer pointed at her mouth. "An elegant little apocalypse. Gentlemen," she said, rising slowly. "And I use the term loosely. I have a proposition." "You're coming with me," Violin said. "You're giving me the file," Tonic added. "You're both adorable." She reached into her jacket. A symphony of weapons locked onto her. She pulled the data pad. The screen pulsed. Code flickered across it, foreign and alive. The file was spreading. Networks bloomed across her HUD military nodes, black market servers, school databases. "I didn't do this," she muttered. "The file, it's alive. It's transmitting." Tonic's arms twitched toward his holsters. Violin's weapon glowed. Margot held up the pad. A countdown ticked in seconds. She hadn't programmed it. "Dead man's switch," she said. "If I don't check in every 12 hours, the file goes public. Everyone. Everywhere." "You're bluffing," Violin said. "I hope so." 3 seconds. Tyrex's HUD flickered. "Incoming data. Class X, cognitive hazard. Quarantine suggested." He reached to purge it, then paused. Just a sliver of the file had gotten through. A taste. The chaos wasn't just seductive, it made sense. Terrible, beautiful sense. "Protocol 7, Margot said casually. "What's it say?" "Secure the suspects," Violin answered automatically, then frowned. "How do you?" "I've been studying human chaos theory," she said. "You know what we're good at? Breaking patterns. Your backup should be guarding all exits." He turned slightly, confused. "They're a little busy," she said, "with something I call the Disco Inferno." "The what?" An explosion shuddered through the station. From the bar's grimy window, pulsing lights spilled in, accompanied by polka covers of death metal classics. Loud enough to qualify as psychological abuse. "Turns out," Margot said, "if you strobe light at 7.83 hertz and blast high-tempo polka, most species can't help but dance." "Your backup," she added, "is doing the Macarena." This is insane," Violin breathed. "No," Margot corrected. "This is human." The timer hit 0. Nothing happened. "Bluffing," she said with a shrug, "is also very human." Then the ceiling exploded. Not thermite, this time. Shock troopers. 24 of them, crashing through a newly installed skylight. Their armor sparkled with glitter. "Nobody move," their leader shouted, then slipped on a banana peel. 30 seconds of pure chaos erupted. Later, military historians would study it as how not to breach a room. Humans would call it Tuesday. Margot dove behind the bar. Bottles exploded above her. Violin opened fire out of sheer training. Tarnik's gods unleashed something legally questionable and morally unforgivable. Polka kept playing. "This is madness," Violin shouted, ducking as a plasma bolt took off his shoulder pad. "Welcome to humanity," Mago yelled back, cobbling together something behind the bar. "We have jackets." She lobbed it. It exploded in a foaming avalanche that swallowed 3 troopers in what looked like evil shaving cream. What the hell was that? Mentos, cola, and industrial adhesive. I call it the diabetes grenade. A trooper lunged. Mago grabbed Violin, spun him, and used him to clothesline the attacker. "Did you just use me as a weapon?" "Improvisation, baby, chapter 12. Across the room, Tarnik flipped the table, firing from behind it like the galaxy's angriest DJ. Precise, ruthless, completely tactically unsound. "Karum," she shouted. Chapter 7. What? Strategic cowardice. "Run." Something in her voice got through. Tarnik looked around once, decided survival was fashionable, and bolted for the back exit. "We need to go," Margot said, dragging Violin, who still looked offended by physics. "I'm arresting you." "Great. Do it while running." She yanked him toward the shattered doorway. The Molotov cocktail Tarnik had abandoned finally gave up pretending to behave. The bar's alcohol stash decided to join the party. They exploded into the corridor as the entire bar turned into a blazing monument to poor life choices. Alarms howled, civilians screamed, and somewhere deep in Margot's neural interface, the file began composing Chapter 13. A friction merchant caught Margot's arguing with a customer, using the exact same hand-wringing gesture her grandfather used when bargaining for fuel cells. Weird. The galaxy was full of those little echoes, strange habits carried across light years and species, as if the cosmos was trying to remember something it had almost forgotten. In the distance, Accord soldiers were still doing the Macarena, reluctantly, rhythmically, hilariously. "This is your fault," Tyrex gasped beside her as they ran. "Which part?" Margot asked, dodging a fire suppression drone. "The fire, the foam, the dance plague, all of it." "Yeah, that's fair." They rounded a corner and nearly plowed into a squad of Tong's mercenaries. Everyone froze. Weapons went up. Margot raised a hand. "Gentlemen," she said, panting, "your boss ran that way. My friend here is having an existential crisis, and I'm one bad coffee away from a meltdown. Let's all just..." Then it hit her. A cascade of options. Tactical predictions firing through her mind like fireworks made of math and mayhem. 16 ways to disarm. 43 environmental variables. 3 dozen creative ways to turn their own tech against them. Too many options. Too much noise. For a second, Margot couldn't move. Couldn't pick one. Couldn't think. A merc fired. The bolt sizzled past her head, close enough to part her hair with heat. "Rude," she snapped, blinking back into focus. Then Tyrex moved. Stepping forward without hesitation, he fired back, not to kill, but to drop. Precision stun bolts. Each shot landed clean. Each mercenary fell like a rag doll. Margot blinked at the pile of unconscious muscle. "Why?" she asked. "Because," Tyrex said, stepping over her body, "I've been tracking you for 3 days. In that time, you've caused more chaos than most battalions. But you haven't killed anyone. Not one. The file says..." "I don't care what the file says." He stopped, turned, met her eyes. Margot stared at him. "You read it," she said softly. "Some of it," he admitted, voice unreadable. "It's insane. It's human. Same thing." And there it was, just a flicker, but the corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Your ship or mine?" he asked. "Mine," she said. "Yours probably has regulations and functioning life support." "What's wrong with life support? It doesn't build character." They jogged on, ducking under low-hanging steam vents and sidestepping Accord medics desperately trying to triage dancing casualties. And for the first time in a long time, Margot felt something like trust. Fragile, Terrifying, utterly human. Behind them, the bar still burned, the music still played, and in some corner of the station, a lieutenant was still dancing against his will. Then her comms flared. "Miss Quinn." The voice was cool, sharp, laced with a kind of calm that meant big guns and no patience. "This is Admiral Vera, Soul of the Galactica. I believe we need to talk." Margot didn't break Strida. "Sorry, Admiral. Busy night. Hair's on fire. Maybe later." "I know what the file really is." That stopped her cold. Beside her, Tyrex's posture shifted. "It's not a manual," Soul continued. "It's a record, a testimony. And if you keep spreading it, you'll doom us all." "Bit dramatique, Admiral." "It describes them, Miss Quinn. The enemy humanity faced. They're not gone." There was something in her voice. Fear, not the bureaucratic kind, real fear. The kind that lived in bones. "They're just waiting," the Admiral said. "And you're teaching the galaxy to think like the only species that ever made them blink. And waking up the vines who never forgot." A pause. Then the real bomb. "The Venos are out there, Miss Quinn. Human descendants. Hiding. Integrated. We've spent centuries keeping them docile. Predictable. Safe." Margot's heart stuttered. "Descendants," she'd always assumed. "Well," she said, voice tight, "that's either the worst pickup line in history or we've got a problem." "Ship," Tyrex said. "Ship," she agreed. They ran. Behind them, Nexus Station burned in rainbow lights and foam. Ahead, the file pulsed with truths wrapped in madness. And somewhere out there between stars something ancient stirred at the scent of human chaos returning to the galactic stage. The FUBAR protocols weren't just notes in a manual. They were a warning, a punchline, a memory. And the galaxy had forgotten the joke. The inevitable logic loomed ahead of Thema, dreadnought the size of a god's grudge. Sleek, armed to the teeth, floating like a cathedral made of no thank you. Margot slumped into her duct-tape pilot chair, staring through a viewport held together with hope and stubbornness. "That's a big ship," she muttered. "It's Admiral Soul's personal flagship," Tyrex offered. "Crew of 12,000. Armament sufficient to sterilize a small moon." He tapped his console. "They're charging a stellar quarterization array." "What now?" "They're going to blow up the local star." Margot blinked. "That seems excessive." FUBAR spread to 47 systems in under a week. Crimes up 3,000%. Military casualties are down, but morale's in freefall due to, quote, enemies who won't stop making puns during firefights. "Humanity," Margot sighed. "Teaching the galaxy to post since 2674. Her comms sparked. Admiral Soul's face appeared perfect, glacial, terrifyingly composed. "Miss Quinn, enforce a violin. How good of you to come." "Hey, Admiral Buzzkill," Margot replied. "Nice sunkiller. Trying to impress someone?" The Admiral's left eye twitched. "Barely." "Score one for Team Unfiltered. 3 days ago," Soul said, as if Margot hadn't spoken. "The Hegemony's Third Fleet attempted to use your Florida Man protocol during training, and they lost 40% of their ships to what survivors called aggressive stupidity. Did they win, though? They destroyed their own flagship with a toaster. So yes, another twitch. The file must be purged. Every copy, every fragment, the chaos it spreads is exactly what we need," Margot interrupted. She leaned forward. "No jokes this time, no grins. I read it all, every note, every manic scribble. Do you know what humanity fought? That's classified." "The silence," Margot said quietly. And the Admiral froze. "They brought order," Margot continued. "Perfect logic, predictable death. They crushed every species they encountered because patterns are easy to kill." Tyrex leaned in, realization hitting like a hammer. Every species but one. Us, Margot nodded. They came expecting strategy and spreadsheets and sanity and got chickens. They got snack bombs and glitter mines. They got improvised jazz warfare and tactical disco. They got us. The screen was silent. Then the Admiral asked softly, "Vivon?" "That word's not in the file," Margot whispered. "None of the afters are. No endings, just victories, madness, then silence. So I have to ask, Admiral, where's humanity?" The question drifted across the stars. "Where are my people? Where did they go?" Silence. Then Soul spoke. "Gone. Scattered in the veins of creation. Altered. Hidden." When it was over, when the silence retreated, humanity looked at what they'd become and chose to fade, to stop themselves from becoming the very monsters they'd defeated. Margot swallowed hard. So they left the file, not just as a weapon, but as a message, a reminder, the Admiral said, which is why it must be destroyed. Her voice sharpened. "They've been quiet for 8 centuries. But if the galaxy starts thinking like humans, if we start fighting like humans, they'll come back," Tyrex said. "They will," So confirmed. "And this time, there won't be a humanity left to stop them." Margot sat with that for a long moment. Then inevitably she started laughing. "Oh, Vera." Margot wheezed between laughs. "You beautiful, logical fool, don't you get it?" She leaned closer to the comms feed, eyes gleaming. "The file isn't making aliens think like humans. It's reminding humans how to think like themselves." The Admiral's voice snapped back tight. "What are you talking about?" "Humanity is scattered," Margot said, grin sharpening like a blade. "Not gone." She watched the tension bleed into the Admiral's face, a flicker of denial trying to claw its way up through all that control. "Did you really think we just vanished? We've been here the whole time, hiding in plain sight, playing by your rules, being good little citizens." She ticked the points off on her fingers. "The Kovani mechanics keeping your ships running, human descendants, the Fricks artists everyone calls visionaries, quarter human. Hell, Admiral, your own science officer, the one who accidentally invented 3 new forms of explosion last month." Her grin widened. Her great-grandmother was from Detroit. For just a moment, the Admiral's composure cracked not into surprise, into resignation. "We know," Soul admitted quietly. "We've always known. Genetic drift, pattern anomalies, that damn tendency to solve problems with detonators. We've spent 8 centuries managing you, separating you, keeping you tame." "Ouch," Margot said, though her heart was hammering now. "Plural, descendants, not dozens, not hundreds. Enough to need managing, so how's that going?" "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Her fingers danced across the console, but she wasn't typing. Not really. The file was already moving. Through her, the FUBAR protocols surged across bandwidths like a memory uncaged. "They're not just instructions, Admiral. They're a wake-up call, a viral memory. And guess what?" Margot turned her gaze toward the bridge beyond Soul's image. "Your boy Revik got his copy 3 days ago." The Admiral spun. "Commander Revik?" The officer stepped forward. His grin was wide, familiar, human. "Sorry, Admiral, but my great-great-grandfather was from Australia. The file found me, sent me a message, reminded me what we gave up to keep you all safe." He reached for his helmet and peeled it off. "Time to remember who we really are." The bridge shifted, faces changed, helmets dropped, masks fell. A Frickson juggled plasma cores like they were fruit. A Saran pilot began building something very illegal looking out of their own console. Expressions flickered from shock to revelation to relief. And Margot realized she hadn't been one of the last. She'd just been waiting for the rest to wake up. "This is the thing about humans," she said, voice low, reverent. "Watching a secret unfold in real time. We're everywhere. Doctors, engineers, Artists, soldiers. We've been holding back, being polite, predictable. She leaned in close to the Admiral's image. But that file? It's not a weapon, Vera. It's permission. The Admiral looked around her bridge 8, the crew she thought she knew. This is mutiny, she whispered. This is Tuesday, Revik replied cheerfully. Also, the stellar cauterization array? Offline for 6 hours. I replaced the targeting system with a karaoke machine. The crew's confused, but weirdly motivated. Margot howled with laughter. Oh, I like him. You can't, Soul said desperately. The silence will come, whether we're ready or not. But here's the thing about humanity, Margot interrupted. Her voice dropped. We don't win by being stronger, or smarter, or more advanced. She hit the red button. No explosions followed. Instead, every screen lit up with the same flickering message. Congratulations. You've been enrolled in Humanity 101, Advanced Chaos Theory. Lesson 1. Always have a backup plan. Lesson 2. The backup plan is usually worse. The Admiral's voice cut in like a blade. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Margot said. And for one seat was true. The file used my systems, my salvage rig, my brain. It's been using me as a relay since I opened it. She took a shaky breath. Every human descendant in 50 systems just got the full protocols, a DNA test kit, and an invite to the universe's biggest family reunion. Tyrex looked at her, eyes wide. When did you? Chapter 1337, Margot replied. Always be plotting. Also, she nodded toward the screen. I had help. Anytime, cousin, Revik said. Cousin. The word hit like a supernova. Not alone. Not rare. Just waiting. Admiral Soul slumped into her chair, the weight of it all settling on her like gravity turned hostile. Do you have any idea what you've done? Margot smiled. Cheerful, shaky, defiant. Yeah, I reminded a few million humans they're allowed to be themselves. She raised her chin. The galaxy's about to get real interesting. Million? The number echoed in her chest like a war drum. Then Tyrex spoke. Voice calm, steady, different. The silence will face something they've never faced before. Everyone turned. A galaxy that thinks like humans. Not just humanity, everyone. He looked around the bridge. At its core, that's what the file does. Not turning aliens into humans, but reminding them, chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's what happens when order forgets how to laugh. Margot stared at him, blinking. That was beautiful. I've been reading chapter 9003, Tyrex said. Philosophy as a weapon. On the main screen, Soul sat frozen, surrounded by her mutinous crew, facing a salvage ship held together with duct tape and divine nonsense. Fine, she said at last. But if the silence returns, we'll throw chickens at them, Margot said. Really? Really angry chickens. For the first time, the Admiral's mouth twitched. Just a hint of a smile. Gods help us all. Chapter 1, Margot recited. When in doubt, improvise. And across 50 systems, in kitchens and workshops, in back alley medical bays, humans remembered how to laugh in the face of danger. Months later, the bar was nicer this time. Actual walls, proper ceiling, drinks that weren't trying to kill you unless you asked for that. Somewhere in the background, a pulsing remix of an ancient Earth ballad thumped in time with the station's heartbeat. Margot sat in her usual corner. Same slouch, same drink. But this time, the chaos was comfortable. At the bar, a hegemony officer was teaching a Fricks artist how to weaponize garnish. Two Saran engineers were debating duct tape usage like it was holy scripture. In the corner, a group of mixed species played combat chess with real stakes and fake rules. Tyrex slid into the seat across from her. His uniform was the same. Mostly, someone had added racing stripes made of electrical tape. "The galaxy's gone mad," he said. Margot raised her glass. "Not mad." She smiled. "Human. There's a difference." "Is there, though?" They clink glasses. "Any word from the frontier?" she asked. Tyrek's face sobered. "Long-range scouts report anomalies. Ships that move too precisely. Colonies that go quiet in perfect thematic intervals. Himeter Ace? They're testing us, and we're failing their tests in the best way possible." "How so?" "A silence probe showed up in the Vega system last week." "And what happened?" "The local defense force hit it with 30 tons of glitter. A looping voice recording of someone's grandmother criticizing life choices, and a swarm of drones reprogrammed to aggressively redecorate. The probe retreated. Fast." Margot nearly spit out her drink. "It worked?" "Apparently. The silence prioritized pure efficiency. And there is nothing efficient about cleaning glitter out of starship internals." Chapter 184, Glitter is Forever. They sat for a moment, letting the silence fill with the quiet chaos around them. Across the room, a Corvani engineer was assembling something that looked like it could either power a city or mix 12 drinks at once. Margot wasn't sure which. She didn't need to be. Because just then, she caught a gesture subtle, unconscious, familiar. A flick of the hand, a shrug, the tilt of a head, the kind of body language that echoed across centuries. Another descendant, another cousin, even if neither of them knew it. "Think we're ready?" Tyrex asked quietly. "When they come back for real?" Margot didn't answer immediately. She let her eyes drift over the room, former enemies laughing together. Engineers arguing over the tactical application of duct tape, a holographic game of chess being played with zero regard for the rules. No one here was ready in the traditional sense. No one was armed with precision. But every soul in the room was thinking differently now, bending rules, ignoring limits, smiling at the impossible. "No," she said finally. "We're not ready. We'll never be ready." She stood and stretched, her voice carrying that dangerous glint of joy. "And that's exactly why we're dangerous." Tyrex frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Margot smirked. Chapter 2001. "If it makes sense, you're doing it wrong." He laughed at a sound that not long ago would have been classified as a warning sign on an enforcer's record. "So what now?" "Now," she said, cracking her knuckles. "Now we prepare. We gather duct tape, train the chickens, hone our battle puns, and wait." "For what?" "For the silence to realize their mistake." She ticked it off on her fingers. "They gave us 8 centuries. 800 years for humanity to scatter, to adapt, to spread our worst and best traits across the stars. They thought we were extinct, that they'd fought a single species of chaos." She turned, eyes alight. "But what's coming for them now is a galaxy that had learned how to weaponize unpredictability, that knew how to laugh in the face of annihilation, that had studied humanity not as conquerors, but as the one thing that had made the impossible possible. Hope was back, not the orderly, logical kind, the loud, reckless, stupid, beautiful kind. And most importantly, it wasn't alone anymore. Because humanity hadn't died. It had gone quiet, waiting. The silence were returning. And this time, the galaxy wouldn't meet them with order and reason. It would meet them with glitter bombs, improvised plans, and the oldest, most dangerous weapon in the universe, audacity. FUBAR had never been about glory. It wasn't about elegance or pride or protocol. It was about results, ugly, messy, brilliant results. Winning weird, winning with style. Because if there's one thing humanity taught the stars, style beats strategy every single time, especially when chickens are involved. File Addendum 2847 on the nature of victory. Victory isn't about firepower or intelligence or speed. Victory is doing something so irrational, so mind-bendingly absurd, that reality itself pauses and says, "Wait, What? And when it works, you don't explain. You don't apologize. You just grin, shrug, and start building something even dumber. Because that's how we survive. That's how we win. That's how we change the rules. Welcome to the human race. Now grab some duct tape and let's get weird.